We'd like to thank the following sponsors.
Welcome to a special GlassBuild Connect edition of the Edify Studios podcast. We had the good fortune of sitting down with Nick Bagatelos of Bagatelos Architectural Glass Systems at the 2019 GlassBuild America show in Atlanta, Georgia. We had a lot to talk about with Nicky Bags, as he's known in the industry, so we went ahead and chopped this up into a 3-part special edition series for GlassBuild Connect. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Welcome to the Edify Studios podcast, discussing the shift of architectural concepts into actual solutions, disrupting the current status quo, and having a blast the whole time. Here are your hosts, Brad Glauser and Brad Walker.
Welcome to part 2 of our special GlassBuild Connect edition of the Edify Studios podcast. No sense in delaying the goodness, so we'll just jump on in. Enjoy. So now you guys have folded into this this new development of from changing from working with your dad and you've stepped into it.
So actual
Bags.
Bagatelos Architectural Glass Systems. And I'm going to say something about that.
Please.
Kind of cheesy.
No.
You know, I was in my 30s.
What are you talking about?
My name is Bagatelos. So we were always like, hey, Bags. That's
Sure.
my
Yeah.
dad, my brother. All of us have been called the Bags. And I was like, Bagatelos Architectural Glass Systems. Oh, I could take my high school nickname and put it in my company. Now I'm like running a
That's awesome,
statewide
actually.
business, but
It would be
It's a
weird
great
if
brand name. It's
it'd
a
be-
great brand name.
If you were forced to use a Z at the end or something
Yeah.
else, that would be cheesy.
That would be
If
a
it's
double
Bags
Z.
with 2
or like a
Z's.
hyphen Z or something.
Right? And Bags makes perfect sense because you took the name and you made it into the name, so
Yeah.
it's magic. I think you should get a marketing award.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. So Bags is now Bags, and they're trying to build into this. You sold the one that you got into a funky contract on, and then you sold the others. Now you guys have worked through those. What happens? How does Bags keep trucking after that?
So what happened was we were in the middle of that internet boom. So we went from, we did $1 million in work the first year. We finished the other projects. So we did $1 million in the first year. By the end of that internet boom, so from
Right.
97 through about 2002, because we're glass, we're at the end of the we went from $1 million to $13 million in sales, which it was a huge
That's
growth.
a huge jump.
And
That's a
worked
massive
well.
jump.
And it was all stick wall. We started doing a little bit of prefab, like prefab ladders, and then the recession hit. It decimated us.
Sure.
We dropped back to maybe $5 million in sales, the first year into that. And my brother and I looked at a company, Wolters & Wolf, and I say they're the best glazer in America. They don't do, probably in the world, Perma-Stelisa maybe do $1 billion in sales. Sometimes they lose money.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make 20, 30 million, 50 million. That company has the best processes in the world.
Walters
They're
Wolf.
dynamite.
Wolters
Yeah,
& Wolf,
yeah.
and they make money every year, and they know their sweet spot, and they kill it. And I looked at what they did. They had unitized. They had their own design,
Right.
engineering. I'm like, and that's my brother. I went to
Sure.
my brother. I got an idea, and he's like, I like that one. So
That's actually a good one.
we started doing some of our own design. We designed our own first system, and
Right.
then we came out of that recession. We were going to the Bay, and I had these great glazers that were better than us. And the way I was getting jobs is, if they said no, 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 then I was like, I'll do it. And there was enough work that I was
Sure.
able to build that 12 or 13 million, and then the same thing after the recession. And what happened was,
Yeah.
there was an opportunity to do hospital work. And
Sure,
Oshpod
there was an enormous wave of Oshpod work that came.
And there was legislation in 2000 that said over the next 10 years, every single hospital was going to have to be rebuilt or retrofit. And most of them had to be rebuilt. So my father, this opportunity for design build hospitals came about. And there were $3 to $6 million contracts. And my old man said, don't ever do Oshpod. Those guys at the state are crazy. And what did we do?
Exactly that.
Exactly the opposite. We did Oshpod. But what happened was the generals and the architects realized that they weren't going to be able to get all of this done without going to a true design build process. So they offered $100,000 to $200,000 design contracts.
Was that
to
just
get
kind of like
Oshpod.
they woke up and said, "Oh, we actually design bid build doesn't work, so design build should work"? Or
I think everyone realized that to do the normal design process on a curtain wall is
arduous.
about 13 months. But with Oshpod, it was 3 years. And there's no way.
Oh, my Lord.
So they realized, the generals realized, in this sector, we're going to do that. So I was lucky enough to take that risk, go against what my old man said, and he was probably right.
He was right.
He was right. But what happened was we were able to build an engineering team around Oshpod work. So from 2000 through 2005, I built a 6 or 7 person engineering group. And right about that time, I was given the opportunity to present on a $30 million design build Oshpod project in San Francisco. And what happened was they brought in all the big guys, and in the RFP, I read through it, and I'm like, they're only bringing me to the game because I've got Oshpod experience. All the big guys had said no to all the Oshpod work. I had 5 years experience, so they're like, they're going to get me in the room to hear what I have to say, but they're going to give this to the big guys. But it's practice. I get to sit in a room on a gigantic project and practice.
Let's go after it.
So I'm like, let's go. So we did all of the normal stuff for the RFP. The last 2 or 3 days, I read through it. I'm like, oh, they want us to follow Lean, the Toyota way. And I'm like, going to Amazon, ordered the book. I read the book, the Toyota way. Over the 2 days before the meeting. They also said, you're going to do BIM and you're going to use Revit. I went to have my head of engineering. I'm like, can you use Revit?
This is 2005?
2005. And he's like, I've heard of it. I don't know. Let me download
2005 Revit. That must have been.
Let me download a demo. He did. He came in the next day, so the day before the presentation. And he's like, yeah, Nick, I can use it, but the tool's cumbersome. Doesn't really work. Nothing of value to our industry. And I'm like, can you use it? And he said, yes. And I'm like, don't even say but. You can do it? And he's like, yes, Nick.
Yes.
So I went into the meeting, did my presentation. At the end, I said, you know what? We're going to BIM this job, and we're going to use Revit. And they're like, oh, you know Revit and BIM. I'm like, no, but my head of engineering says he can do it. And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, and we're going to Kaizen this job and use Lean. And they're like,
look at all
so
this
you know
beautiful
Lean? I'm
work.
like, no, but I read the Toyota way over the last 2 or 3 days, and if that's what you want, we will sit in the big room and do what you say you want.
We will Kaizen this.
I swear to God, that whole innovation thing, I said yes. My competitors all said no.
Sure.
This is how we build. Oshpod's hard enough. We're going to do it our way, or we're not going to do it. And literally, to my surprise, 10 days later, they're like, we want you to do this job. The design,
Knowing the right words.
The
Knowing the right
design
words.
for that project was $2.8 million.
Just the design.
Just the design. So, and I built an engineering group that learned Revit because of that job. So we went through 3 years of fighting and wrestling with a tool that at the time wasn't ready for prime time, but my players
also wasn't
learned.
ready to think inside the curtain wall box.
Exactly.
That's the thing,
So
right?
I created my own workarounds for like 5 years. I tried to use the tool.
Like your engineering standards, all those processes.
Everything had to change, but I was building it around that and that innovation model. And what happened was, by that time I had 5 or 6 engineers. 2 of them quit. 2 of them just said, no, we can go do what we've been doing for 20 years somewhere else.
Right.
We'll get paid the same. We like you, Nick, but we're not going to do this at
Thanks,
this point.
no thanks, we're out.
2 of them faked it, and it took 6 or 8 months before we realized, and they were gone. The 2 young guys took to it, and I ended up bringing in guys that had been working with my CNCs and doing G-code. They were interested in the next step, And those guys, I'm like, are you guys interested in learning this tool? And they're like, yeah, I want to get off the floor. I gave them the opportunity. 3 of my lead engineers, no college degrees, started on my factory floor. So what I learned was those tools can embed so much more information, and actually having curtain wall experience can almost slow your adoption. So my 15 or 16 engineers, every one of them is keen and open to innovation and applying the next generation tool. And that's been remarkable, because I just won a project from the best firm in the country, and the reason I got the job is because the job needed 12 to 13 months to design. They needed product on site in 9 months. I agreed to 9 months. They didn't believe me. I signed the contract and committed. They saw my factory and my engineering.
Right.
I delivered in 9 months. Something that would have taken me 5 years ago, 13 months.
Easy.
So the tools, right? The tools are literally adding value, and it's. I didn't go, you know what, there's going to be labor shortages as we approach 2020, and so we're going to use these tools.
Newsflash.
I had no idea, but I said yes to the innovation, and now my engineers can do 30 to 50% more than a guy who's really good at AutoCAD. And it just happened because I said yes.
Yeah, you said yes. And that's the piece.
Well,
so for me, I'm just
Go
going to touch quickly on the fact that 9 months is insane.
It's
like I literally break out in hives if it's less than 12 months, right? Like I will break out in a rash. So I know 9 months can be done. Kudos to you for actually, jumping on that opportunity, because there are a lot of people that would absolutely go, no.
Right.
And it's the
majority,
no's.
The majority.
Well, the no's never win, right?
5
they just
years
don't.
ago, I did say no.
Right.
Even 2 years ago, but I started with these tools 12 years ago. 6 years, I finally started wrangling and figuring out how to use them and do the workarounds needed to make the tools work.
It just sounds like you developed your own program, though, like inside Revit, because
what it took was I'm using Revit.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm using. I tried to use Revit as my manufacturing tool.
Didn't work.
No, but what I did is I bought SQL databases, which cost me tens of thousands.
Sure.
And an IT person who can and I connected it to Inventor. So now I have direct connection from my Revit to my Inventor, but it took years to create the libraries that are transferable.
There was an interesting move that you mentioned here when you said you brought the CNC guys off the factory floor into the engineering department after those couple guys left.
Right.
Was the intelligence of the practicality of what that CNC could do from a 6-axis machine, bringing it into like the 3D world of Revit, understanding, because that application helped that process happen further, or did because there's so much horse sense that's in our industry as far as like, man, this guy's got seasoned curtain wall experience. He's got seasoned envelope experience. Bring them into a state where they can actually then apply that knowledge upstream.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a seed to bring that into that area? I'm curious.
No. At the time, here's what happened.
Sure.
We bought the CNC.
Okay.
I'm like, my head of engineering can program. I'm like, I can't have you on the floor. You got to be working. And he's like, Nick, don't worry.
We got this.
There's gonna be a kid on the floor who's a gamer.
Yeah.
So true though.
Who's going to want to do it? And I'm like,
that's what I was hoping.
I'm like,
I see him all the time.
okay, that's a lot of trust. I got a couple of $500,000 more machines that I'm buying, and my brother, who's spending the money, I'm like, we'll do it. My brother's like, I'm scared. We're not. So what happens is the German guy sets up the machines, and like third day in, he walks into the office to me and my brother to tell us progress, and he's like, everything is going well. He's like, there's this boy who wants to see the manual, and I'm like, and he's like, I'm not going to give, and I'm like, give the kid the manual. Give him the manual. Literally, 3 or 4 days later over a weekend, he's in the shop and he's starting to G-code. And I'm like, okay.
What?
He brings one of his buddies in who works on the factory floor. When he moved into the office, that kid took over. And it's been a model for us and a reminder. You know, my dad was a glazer. There was never a time in my career
Right.
that a glazer or one of my people came to me and said, "Hey, Nick, I see a better way." That I said, "Shut up, I'm the boss.
Right.
I'm going to do it my way.
I
and
tell you
know
where the
your
better
price,
way
buddy."
Oh my God.
No, it was always, I'm.
You're right.
Yeah, tell
I'll
me.
let you know the better
but
way.
the problem
I'll
was,
let you know.
without something like lean and a process in place,
Right.
to try to facilitate, we have 200 people working for us.
Sure.
How do you get those lessons learned in? And building the procedures gave us a place to take lessons learned from my factory floor, from my field, and embed them in procedures.
Sure.
We're strict about procedures, but we also have a procedure to create continuous improvement. So every person on the floor, every person in the field, everyone in engineering
Has that right.
has the right, and we have a process where they can submit it, and then the group decides, and this is why we're going to, or this is why we're not, and this is what we're doing instead of that.
Are those tracked like on a daily format? Those
You know,
type of
my
thing?
factory floor
That sounds
in the
awesome.
last year has had 75 improvements. And we went from, in the first 3 or 4 years, we had like 280 improvements.
Right.
And we've just steadily making improvements, safety improvements, process improvements that have helped. And that bringing that young man
The gamer.
into the gamer,
I love
who,
this. I love that.
who now he's my junior estimator. He's my number 2 person in developing my BIM models
Right.
to develop my pricing. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, and
But the real success comes from not living in the dumb ass bubble of if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Right.
Like anybody who says that is going to fail because they are not going to be, moving forward like you are.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it sounds like as much as you're involved, you also kind of stay out of the way.
yes.
You know what I mean? Like these guys can easily get in their own way. Now that's probably
I
not
think-
true for
I
you
think
guys out
some
there
people,
who work
like,
for this guy, but
some people would say he's not doing anything.
well,
But I
hey,
am.
that's
I
fine.
am.
But as long as you're like
You're talking to us on the podcast right now,
Right,
Nick.
right.
What are you talking about?
we've talked
My
to
guys are installing units, and I'm here like
there's a very
chilling with Brad and Brian.
yeah there's a very powerful thing though of working on your business more than in it,
Right.
right? Like you have a responsibility now that you've built this organization, and the organization is going to do what it needs to do,
Right.
And Nicky Baggs needs to do what he needs to do, which is continue to drive and innovate and not worry about everything that's happening on the floor of the facility,
Right.
because that's not where you need to be and that's not where they need you to be.
Right.
So recognizing that, because a lot of it gets clogged up.
Right. And with the innovation now,
Yes.
there is the potential to track every cut, every milling, and connect those to the model. It's not being done yet, but I see it, and
Right.
it will be done. 10 years from now, all of the winners in this game will be doing that. The tools aren't quite ready, but as the tools evolve, I'm going to be using them. I want to be
that's an
right
interesting
behind
point,
that
actually.
cutting edge.
That's an interesting point that you say that within the next decade that'll work. Your adoption to Revit has been since 2004 and 5 when
Right.
you actually made that switch.
Right.
I just think back in 2004 and 5 on how that, just the technology, like that was just when like GDS estimating software was like,
Right.
hey, you can build a 2D elevation and it will spit out a material parts list for you.
Right.
Right? Like
with massive amounts of input in advance to get the program to work.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I'm just looking at it from a now look at this opposite side of it. Now we're 2019, we're like 2029. That 10 years of understanding the processes of what BIM, what Revit, and what the 3D world can bring to this industry.
Right.
It's
huge. It is a sea shift in what is going to be possible.
Do you think that
in our
that's
game.
the only direction it can go, and that will be the attrition of the industry of companies?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, so 13 months, 9 months. How do you beat someone who can say, I can do this in 9 months? You
13
can't
months?
beat
9
that.
months.
9 months. Right?
Well, I mean, just
and
the
does
bottom
price
line on
even
schedule
matter
and money.
in
Yeah.
9 months?
It's
Right?
really
In
weird,
3
but
months
that couple of months, that 4 months, is a huge difference.
There's a huge value.
I mean, there is a massive amount of value that can happen, and there's a massive amount of, if you're not ready for that 9 months and you don't have processes and procedures in place for that 9 months, it won't be 9 months,
Right.
No.
right? You know that
Right.
straight up.
Right. So, and honestly, I believe that over the next 5 years, I'm going to be able to take that to 3 months. I do.
Are you kidding me?
No, I believe that you
really
could, because
believe
if
that
you
that's
say
a
it, I
possibility.
believe it.
So that's 12 weeks.
Yes.
I'm just thinking. I think in the world
I
of
can't get
aluminum,
returned shop drawings in 12 weeks.
Right.
I just think of the
see. So that's. I think we're going to need to retrain the AC community
Sure.
about the possibilities, and that's not going to happen on the 390. I'm making up a number, but the 500,000 buildings that are built
Okay.
next year. It's going to happen on a select group of buildings that the owner, the contractor, the architect brings in a team that can bring something with modularity to the market faster. And those companies are going to gather 1 or 2 or 3 subs that can integrate one another's work rapidly, and those companies are going to get those type of jobs. That piece of the industry is going to evolve that way. And once the industry develops that piece of the industry develops the tools, then it will leak into the other places in the industry, and then it will take off and become a standard. But
Look,
there's
I'm
got to be
not
the
going
first
to. I'm not going to refute it, Nick. To tell you that from what you've said, just of saying like I came back from Germany, understand the photovoltaic curtain walls, and said yes, 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 and you constantly got, well, that's too expensive, too expensive, too expensive. But all you
too
did,
much risk. You know what my old man told me? He's like, Nick, Glazers can't install electrical. They'll get electrocuted.
Oh, really?
And I sat in a meeting with an electrician. He's like, we can't put in glass. It's going to leak. And I'm like, it's
right. No. I'm just thinking about it from like what I look from back when you're in your Germany experience, and like all you did is come back and you were like, no, you know what? I think it was one of those like, as the tide rises, those boats go up.
Yeah,
for
right?
sure.
Right.
And so and all those boats go up. Those boats that are anchored and that don't have the slack, that don't have the flexibility, that are so dyed in the wool of this 2D operation, will be tied to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then as that tide rises, that'll happen. But the reason why I bring that up is because when you say that it can happen, go from 9 to 3, and my aluminum brain says, wait a minute. So if I've got just 12 weeks to cut dies and actually like produce a system and finish it, that's a typical 12-week timeline, right? Right. And so I'm looking at it going from a deliverable of a unit wall product in 3 months. I'm loving that it's blowing my brain right now.
No, for sure.
I'm loving that it's literally just breaking
What if
barriers.
what if I'm buying, if my analytics show that I'm buying, 3,500 stock lengths of heads still horizontal.
Right.
I know that, and I know with my analytics that we're using from my past models and my future models that I'm going to be ordering this much of this system. I mean, every single grocery store does that.
Yes.
So
They
why
do the
shouldn't
same
I
thing.
have the extruder ready to extrude and delivering to me within 24 hours and know 6 months in advance when I am going to be ordering? That's not unreasonable. That's possible if you have the tools, right?
Yes.
All of those things can be reduced if you have great partnership between that full value stream. And
it's your supply chain and managing it and pushing it to not just be what everybody else gets.
And that's part of that Toyota way. It's like Toyota didn't do all of that on their own. They enforced specific requirements on product types, engineered it, worked with their downstream manufacturers.
Now I'm thinking a little bit outside the box.
Right.
It's breaking my. So we're talking upstream value stream. We're talking downstream value stream. We're talking everybody actually involved in that. I'm still kind of on that world of like, this is your problem.
It's getting everybody else caught up though.
Yeah.
I was sitting.
Interesting. Okay.
I was sitting with one of the best glass fabricators in the country last year, and I sat down with my team, and they were like, in Vegas at one of the BEC.
Sure.
Okay.
And they're like, Nick, what can we do to make us a better supplier for you? And I'm like, let's change how you bunk and ship to us to make it easier so we don't have all this. And they're like, oh, we've had studies with universities that show this is the best way to do it, and it's the most cost effective. And we looked at that 5 different times over the last 10 years. And I'm like,
So where is it?
Nothing. They like.
So
said,
what's
"We're
that?"
not
Which
gonna
one
do
are
it."
you doing then?
Right. They do the boxes
Sure.
made of wood. That's the cheapest, easiest for them to do. Right.
Okay.
So, but if you think about it, if I had
Has nothing to do with fabricating glass, by the way.
No.
Like they asked, and your answer has nothing to do with like
Right.
how they're
How
fabbing
do you
it.
get
Or
it to me? So
Yeah. How do you
if
get
you
it
had
to
a
me?
standardized bunk that was standardized with my manufacturing, and you shipped it with that, so I didn't have to open anything. It came in the unit order that I'm fabricating my unitized curtain wall.
Yeah.
I might save, for every unit, 18 minutes. Well, 2,000 units on a job, 18 minutes
Oh
on
my
the
God.
movement of
Adds up
glass.
in a
The
heartbeat.
most dangerous thing that I do in my factory, which is moving
and the most
to
liability too.
Right.
And
So
you want to touch it the fewest amount of times.
But if I could get that vendor to shift the way that they're doing that, they're going to become more valuable to me.
Absolutely.
Maybe
Sure.
I could get my
Absolutely.
brother to like
Release.
give him 15 cents more a square
Yeah.
foot because I'm picking up 28.
Sure.
You know,
There's room
So
for it.
There's room for those
Miles
things.
per
You just
gallon.
need
Miles per gallon on
all
this.
the
Yeah.
players.
Absolutely.
So that was a year ago. Now they've developed this bags rack, or no?
No, because they
Because,
asked,
right? Because.
Because and what I found is I have 30 great innovation ideas that I'm trying to implement within my company.
Yeah.
Only 30.
Yeah, right?
I just built a chart that's probably, once I fill it out, it's going to be like 60, but that's another story. But what I've done
We'll
is,
save that for another podcast.
Yeah,
How
right,
does that
exactly.
sound?
what I've realized is I know this, I need to find the piece that has the most value to the most dire straits. So I need
Yeah.
things that make my installation safer, easier, faster. So if I can do that, I want to find an innovation that's going to allow my field guys the least friction. If that makes it harder for my factory, then my factory is going to have to do it in a way that that isn't as fast and isn't as easy. And if my factory finds a way that's better, then my engineers are going to have to find a way to do it the way they want. So it's looking at the innovation, looking at the changes, and see where they bring the most immediate value in the next 6 months. We just picked up a software tool that I am going to pay for 2 years of the tool on the administration of change orders on a large retrofit job. I'm doing a job where it's a 50-year-old building. They're taking the skin off. There's existing precast. The architect wants perfect symmetry.
Sure.
And the floors over a single floor line
Sure.
are
6 inches.
Six,
6 inches.
inches.
That's what we would have guessed. Yeah, yeah.
So
That's awesome.
How do you rectify that in the process? You know, you need
With a change order?
Well, but what's gonna and there's stuff in place. So what's gonna happen is
Yeah.
they're gonna open up the wall. There's 3 subs that come before me that they're not gonna have their stuff done. My guys are gonna be sitting in front of the hole, 6 men at $96 an
Sure.
hour. And instead of getting 20 units a day, we're gonna get 7 and maybe 13, maybe 22, and then 7. And I
And
am
then
not,
1.
And right,
And
and
then 1.
I
Corner
am going
units.
to be
Yeah.
the goat because at the end of the building, the owner's looking up and there's not glass in the building.
Right.
And that story is very hard to tell. So I'm going to
It
use
is.
a tool that allows me to identify
Is
all.
this a 3D scanning?
We're scanning and we're using. It's just about how you collect the data, put it into my schedule, and use that to show the owner and the contractor in advance. Here's where my adjacent subs are going to fall down. I'm building these units. They're sitting waiting to be installed. How can I help you to keep them out of my way? And then giving them a tool because they don't understand the process enough to know where it's going to fall down. I
Right.
do. So how do I communicate them in a respectful way? Because if you ever tell a contractor anything, they're like, shut up. You're a sub. You're a sub.
You're a sub.
Like, even that word, it's like,
Sub is the worst.
I'm not going to really go there, but
Ugh.
there's like sexual connotations that I don't even want to know. And that's who I am. The general always looking
Yes.
over my shoulder. You're the sub.
Subservient.
Yep. So I
It's
I
interesting.
want to
this
build a tool
Yeah.
that makes them able to do their job better without saying, hey, I'm going to make you do your job better. Because if you tell them that, but if you give them a tool to maybe get
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking
give
it
the
through this.
superintendent a way to bunk someone else rather than me, and then show them if they have to bunk them, hey, that's $93. That $93 2,000 times around the job that I don't know. Those are the things that I'm trying to get.
But those are huge because and that's a huge thing right now because I think we're about to see, at least in our markets, and I can't believe that your guys are that far off down there, is like the retrofit, reskin, reclad is massively coming forth in the Pacific Northwest markets,
Huge.
where all these great new buildings were built, and then the guys across the street have to do something,
Right.
Whether it's to get code compliant
Yeah.
or just
Right.
to keep up with the Joneses
just
to a
to
certain
compete in the
degree.
residential world. I mean,
Yeah.
those Class A office spaces that were built in 1978 through 1983
Right.
are
and they're
now.
all single pane.
Right.
Their U value
That's
is
my hotel right
is-
now where I'm at. Right?
Yeah, is at best a 1.
175.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So and there's innovations out there. I'm working with Guardian Industries on their vacuum insulating glass.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
an
That's
improvement.
incredible.
A 1-inch slide of glass that has an R value of 2. You put some argon in it. Maybe you get to an R2.5. You put it into a system. It bleeds 50 to 60%.
Yeah.
You've got a wall that's R1. Even with thermal breaks, you're
Sure.
R1.5, R2 maybe.
Right.
This glass performs at 700% better. So
And glass-
think about the possibilities of
Glass
what
is the
that-
majority. I
Yes.
know.
Well,
This
glass is already doing the heavy lifting, right? We can all admit that aluminum does no favors thermally. Even if you break it, it's still doing, above par.
It's a great conductor.
It's a yes,
excellent
conductor.
That's
Copper's
what
a
it's
little
doing.
bit better.
If
but,
you're looking to transfer energy from cold in, it's perfect.
Hey.
Aluminum's, yeah.
And glass has
Aluminum
been
trick
picking up a lot of the lion's share of the
Right.
of the load for a long time. But the thing about vacuum, first of all, we are massively begging for vacuum to really make its way because it's been around for a while.
Right. Well, but the thing is, technology has finally caught up to the innovative minds that are like, we can do this. We can make the space between 2 lights of glass like outer space. You can literally reduce it to a point where nothing can be transferred through. But, they're using robots, and they've got the super flatness that literally 5 years ago you couldn't buy. There was like 8 or 10 of those furnaces in the world.
Yeah, you couldn't do
Now
that.
that technology is ubiquitous to get the flatness
Exactly.
and the tempering and that nominal
Sure.
space between to create the vacuum insulator.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So the technology is upon us. Now it's incumbent upon glazers to take the ball, run with it, and show the AEC community that there are possibilities.
It is incumbent upon us.
It
You're
is,
absolutely
and,
right.
and in a lot of times, not an industry that's known to have as many Nick Bagatelos as is running at innovation. Like, I love this industry and I'm passionate about it.
Not running, sprinting.
Not
like just a,
like a lot of guys
I'm
are
a sprinter.
backing away more than that, right? Like they're like,
Right.
we'll be over here.
And maybe that's
as they
maybe
disappear into the bushes.
like podcasts like this hopefully will help. And what's going to happen
Has to.
is
Podcasts
if-
just like this.
Yes. What's going to happen, and I'm going to warn you guys, if you've got a company that's going to do it the same way for the next decade, there are going to be upstarts that take your market away from you, and you're going to start too late, and you're going to miss that curve. You're going to be behind, and that innovation curve is going to hit, and you're going to be the guy who knows you've been taken to the contractor to lunch and going golfing with them and whatever else it takes to
Right.
get the contract, and then someone else is going to have none of those contacts, doesn't know anybody in the market, but they're
Wow.
able to do things that you can't do, and they will take your market.
Yeah, they absolutely will. Because if you're not doing it right, you're right. Because if you're not doing it already, you're late already.
Yes.
You're already late because even the concept of like, this is how we're going to run our business, that doesn't just happen overnight. You don't wake up and go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to follow the bag strategy. Let's
So,
go.
you
My
know-
brother
Yeah,
my
go ahead.
brother
Is writing a book called The Bag
conservative.
Strategy.
No, my brother is like, don't tell people. And I'm like,
No.
come on, dude. You and I believe in this passionately. We had to get rid of 70% of our engineering staff to facilitate this.
Yeah.
The big guys, how can you be Permas Talisa with 1,000 engineers and say, we're going to change, and have 300 to 500%,
Wow.
300 to 500
Right.
engineers quit and go somewhere else? You can't do it. You have
Yeah.
to start incrementally in those big companies, which is hard, you know? So,
But you can't be afraid to give away the Colonel's 11 herbs and spices recipe.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you were just
Right.
saying something to me the other day. It's not about having the secret strategy, because you can tell everybody the exact strategy.
Exactly.
Whether they implement it
Right.
or whether they find the right people to implement it is totally different.
There's the
That's you give it away.
and they have the wherewithal and the willpower to move their teams towards the idea of innovation and change.
Well, there's-
people hate
Yeah.
change. The key is find people who want to change, and then they will take over the change, or show the ones that are scared of change that it can make their life easier and better, and then they will take the ball and run with it.
Thanks for listening to the Edify Studios podcast with hosts Brad Glauser and Brad Walker. To learn more about Edify Studios, visit www.edify-studios.com. That's www.edify-studios.com.